I'm a typical white, racist, so-called South African. I just feel it's time that the white South Africans start standing up for themselves in the world. My father was a policeman in the old South Africa. My mother was a nurse. She nursed until last year. She ran a clinic for mainly black people in Zululand in South Africa. And I was myself involved in the war in Angola, and then I served in the townships in South Africa. You know, you look on the internet and you see people writing about slavery in the old South Africa. There were never black slaves in South Africa. When I served in the townships, I was involved in protecting the schools, the black schools, because the ANC were threatening to burn the black schools down. Let me just introduce my wife. As you can see, not as white as I am. So how racist are us white South Africans? I'm from the old South Africa, and yet I've married someone that isn't quite as white as I am. Am I racist? Was my father a racist? You know, today the black people of South Africa are far worse off than what they were in the old South Africa, without a doubt. They're being murdered just as much as the whites are. The African people in New South Africa aren't happy. I don't care what anybody says. I speak Zulu very well. I grew up in Zululand. My friends as a child were little African children, and today the poor Africans are suffering just as much as the white South Africans. The new government doesn't care for its people. They're interested in, from what I can see, destroying the country so that they can exploit it. What do you want to say, babes?
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Of where you came from, how you grew up in next to South Africa.
I myself, I grew up in that there was a huge cultural difference where you can ignore this culture.
My wife not being as white as I am. My father, who's supposed to be this huge racist monster from apartheid, absolutely loves my wife. You know, there's this racist thing is now there. Now there's racism in South Africa. You know, the hatred, you know, that is incited by the SABC, which is the South African Broadcasting, you know, network in South Africa, the government one. Now, I understand Zulu, so when I watch the SABC programs, I actually can understand what is being said there. And nobody else, generally the whites and foreigners, obviously can't understand what's being said there. But the racial hatred that has been incited by the SABC I mean, of course there's going to be murders. If you keep inciting hatred and you know, keep on at it, of course you're going to have hatred from the new generation. And you know, unfortunately the whites in South Africa have embraced the new South Africa. We've worked with the black government. When we handed power over, we weren't overthrown militarily. Our military force was at its peak when white South Africans voted to hand power over to the blacks. Instead of the blacks embracing it and saying, well, okay, these whites in South Africa are willing to work with us, you know, let's forgive them for the past. Let's start a new country. We've got the most prosperous country in Africa. We've got everything going for us that no other African country has. We've got these very intellectual whites that are capable of giving this country the best in Africa. And what are they doing? They're murdering the whites. They're breaking us down. They're humiliating the white children. What for? Why don't they get on and get a country functioning and get at least one country in Africa that's now a democracy to function? Why take a perfectly solid country and take it to Zimbabwe? Because there's 4,000 Zimbabweans fleeing the border. During apartheid, we had to guard our borders because the Africans were trying to flee into the apartheid South Africa. Now, if it was so awful, why were the blacks trying to flee into South Africa? Why? And the whole world has been, I don't know why the world's turned against it. I don't know, because, after the Second World War, there were just as many blacks in Australia, not the blacks, the Aborigines. There were just as many Aborigines in Australia as what there were blacks in South Africa. The population was almost the same. Now, why is it today that there are millions of black South Africans and there are hardly any Aborigines? Because the white South Africans created a sustainable environment where the blacks could live a nice life and a comfortable life. Maybe not to the same standard as the Western world, but in comparison to African standards, the South African black was the best looked after what's the word, babes? They were the best looked after Africans in Africa. And I would like anyone to dispute that and give me facts where during apartheid, other Africans in other African countries lived better than what the black South Africans lived during apartheid. The townships, we patrolled townships to protect and keep law and order because there was a threat of a breakdown of law and order. So in the military, I was called up 3 months a year to go into the townships and maintain law and order. That's gone. Now it's gone right throughout the country. There is now no law and order left. I was in South Africa a couple of months ago. I'm now currently in the UK with my wife. And 3 or 4 houses up the road, an old man was tortured to death where black Zimbabweans burnt him with an iron to death. Where did you see that in the old South Africa? Where do you see, they talk about beatings in the prisons. Our prisons during apartheid were open for United Nations or what was that that lot that used to go to South Africa to check the prisons. But it was open. Where's the proof of all these horrific crimes committed against, genocide against the African people during apartheid? Where's the proof? You hear everyone talking about it. Where's the proof? Anyway, we'll see the response. We'll chat some other time again. Really, but I feel sorry for the white South Africans, and I feel sorry for the majority of black South Africans, because the majority black South Africans have not got a voice. And you'll have a couple of black South Africans on YouTube that will come along and tell you this and that. The next thing, they're known in South Africa basically as the Black Diamonds, because they are a few minority that have been brought up to become wealthy and are lucky enough to have the internet. The majority of South Africans don't have the internet and they have no voice. So I speak for both white and black South Africans. You want to say that?
I agree.
Thank you very much. Cheers.